Today we've got my good friend and longtime guest of this podcast, Al Franken. Thanks so much for coming back on.
You bet. My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
So we both spoke with Jamie Raskin last week. He was a guest on both of our shows. And in his book, Unthinkable, Trauma, Truth, and the Trials of American Democracy, he really went deep into the events of January 6th and how much worse it was than we all even know, how much closer we were to losing democracy than we otherwise thought. And as I was reading his book, I couldn't help but be floored by not only what I was reading, but also floored at basically how this is a non-issue for so many people. Like, we were inches away from a coup in the United States. So as a former senator, do you think that the Congress and Democrats more broadly are doing enough to drive home the depravity and the gravity of what happened on that day and how close we were to actually losing our democracy?
Well, I do think that the Select Committee on January 6th is going to be doing that work, and especially when they have hearings. We obviously have a very divided country, and we have these real nutcases on the right. I mean, that this was legitimate political discourse is what the RNC called it, almost unanimously. I mean, that's crazy. And, Congressman Raskin talked about broken vertebrae, that the cops had their eyes gouged out, the Capitol Police.
Broken fingers,
Fingers broken, broken vertebrae, traumatic brain injury. That's not, legitimate. How can you can't even make fun of how absurd it is.
I know that there are a lot of highly paid political consultants who tell us constantly that the only thing the American people care about is the cost of gas and milk prices, right? But obviously January 6th is a major issue for me. I'm sure it's a major issue for you. I'm sure it's a major issue for people watching and listening to this. We may be the outliers. I'm not sure. But how much do you think that Democrats should be focusing on January 6th as we head into midterms?
Well, I do think this was an unforced error by the Republican National Committee, because I do actually, obviously the Republican Party is now in the thrall of this psychopath, and it's just a nutcase party, and I guess they're fine with what they say. I think they realize they screwed up, right? I think they do. And so I think we should I think it's a great message that they're nuts and that they're scary. And I don't think it's scary how many the Republican base is with him and with this. But I don't think that's 60% or 65% of America. And so I think it helps us tremendously.
If you were running, what percent of your focus would be spent on the events of January 6th versus other elements of campaigning? What would you focus on if you were running?
Well, you can do both. You can walk and chew gum at the same time, and both are incredibly important. The threat to our democracy is an existential one, and is one that we should be talking about all the time. And it has to do with voter suppression and Republicans trying to take over the administration of elections. We should be talking about that. I always think scorn and ridicule is great. And I definitely use that in my campaigns in a certain way, and in my books and in what I do in my podcasts, etc. But I also think we should be talking about the universal pre-K. We should be talking about child care, rising child care,
allowing the government to negotiate lower drug prices,
all that stuff. That's the shame. And I think we should put those issues each on the floor, and just one after another, and so the American people, because the press, it likes to play inside baseball and just horse race. So the American people haven't seen what's in Build Back Better, even though it's been hanging out there forever. But the press just talks about Manchin and cinema, and is it 3.5 trillion, or is it 1.5 trillion, or is it 1.75? We should just put those issues, make it come to a vote on each one of those. And American people are for these things overwhelmingly. And that's, I think, how we win this. I think we need to do that, and as soon as possible, in the roll up to the election.
Well, look, you just mentioned ridicule. I know that you're very good at calling out the ridiculous. So I want to get your take on these anti-critical race theory laws. Ron DeSantis has just come out in favor of the Stop Woke Act in Florida, and we're seeing similar legislation spread up in states across the country as part of this whole culture war focus.
This is that parents can sue teachers if the teacher, anything the teacher teaches is causing discomfort.
Right. The anti-safe space Republicans don't want anybody to experience any discomfort. If you needed if you needed an example of the hypocrisy there.
Oh yeah, it's pretty amazing. And how do you teach American history if you're a teacher in Florida? Then I mean, do you go? Is it like now? In this country, for the first 250 years, there were people that worked for free for other people. And TJ, no, it wasn't like your unpaid internship with your dad's law firm. That was more voluntary. This was involuntary. And it was and it was a lot tougher. Then that went on for about 250 years, and then we had a war that ended it, and then it got better for a while. That was called Reconstruction, and then it got worse. It got worse after that, and then kind of got slightly better after. Ashley, why are you crying? I mean, I don't.
Yeah. It's the entire country. It's the entire history of this country. There is literally no other way to teach it without focusing on these things that might, God forbid, make somebody uncomfortable.
Well, and this whole thing about critical race theory is just a fraud. It's a complete fraud. Critical race theory is not taught in elementary school. It's not taught in junior high. It's not taught in high school. It's not taught in college. It's a graduate level course. It's a law school course, and it's just, they know it. It's just a big lie, and they don't mind doing it. That's what they do. And Youngkin said, the day I become governor, we're going to end critical race theory being taught in our school. It's not being taught. You know it. I mean, he knows it. And it's ugly. It's just ugly. And of course, our history is, people don't know our history. People don't know that redlining was started by the FHA during the New Deal, and that when guys got back from World War II and black soldiers got back from World War II, they couldn't use the GI Bill to buy a home because they're redlined, and I had Heather McGee on the other day on my podcast. And she told me something which I had to look it up after she told me. I trust her. She's a scholar and economist. But that the average black family headed by a college graduate has less wealth than the average white family headed by a high school dropout. Yeah, there's systemic racism in our country, and it's been going on for our entire history. And we have to teach it. And, we're doing our kids a disservice, right?
Yeah. I think it's funny, too.
That's scary.
DeSantis actually invoked Martin Luther King Jr. while he was announcing his support for the bill. He said,
it's the judge by the character.
Yeah, exactly.
Content of your character. That is so bogus.
Invoking Martin Luther King on behalf of a bill that's intention is to stop kids from learning about racial justice.
Well, not only that, but that is used by Republicans all the time, which is, I have a dream that, my children will be judged by the. That was in the I Have a Dream speech in 1963. We still had segregation in the South. This is pre the voting rights bill. This is, and he was that whole speech. If you're maybe too young, I remember the damn speech, and of course we can read it every day. But that was about that there was we're here to collect a promissory note. That there was a check that was written to a bad check written to blacks in this country, and that we are owed. And that was very clear. And this was, he was saying, I have a dream. And this was his dream, but the dream was way off. We weren't there. And to get there, we had to deal with this stuff. And that, when they do that, oh yeah, Martin Luther King said that I have a dream, that people should be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Therefore, we shouldn't discuss our history, and we shouldn't have affirmative action. Martin Luther King was for affirmative action, of course.
I think this is part of a bigger issue that Democrats face, and that's that when it comes to messaging, Democrats are A, always on the defense, always responding to the prevailing narrative put out by Republicans, but B, even when they do control the messaging, they're very bad at it.
They are.
You had a great joke where you said that the prototypical Democratic bumper sticker would spell out some of the message and then say continued on next bumper.
All our bumper stickers end with continued on next bumper sticker.
Right, yeah.
And we're just not good at it. It's easy to point out that we're bad at it. Frank Luntz came up with the death tax. That's brilliant, I guess, And we used to have the Senate, we would do a Senate retreat, a Democratic Senate retreat every year. And we go to some conference center or something for the weekend. And it was always, we were focusing on message. And most of these things were really not very helpful. I remember one year we had these two brothers who wrote a book called Made to Stick. So in the first night they gave a presentation on their book, and it was about messaging. And so they did their presentation, and I went up to them afterwards, and I said, "Oh, I really got a lot out of that your presentation. What was the name of the book again?" And they said, Made to Stick. I said, Made to Stick? Yes, Made to Stick. I go, oh, okay. So the next day they were on a panel discussion and during a breakfast. And so I was getting my scrambled eggs, and one of the brothers was getting his scrambled eggs, and I said to him, really looking forward to this panel discussion. What was the name of your book again? And he said, Made to Stick. Made to Stick. I went, Make it stick? He goes, no, Made to Stick. I go, oh, Made to Stick. He goes, yes. So they do the presentation or the panel discussion, and I come up to him afterwards, the two brothers, and I said, that was really very interesting. What was the name of the book again? And I must have done this like 10 times during the weekend. I remember coming down that evening and saying, like, I tried to buy your book online, but I couldn't. And they go, well, it's on Amazon. I went, no, I put it in, Make It Stick. And they went, it's Made to Stick. I go, oh, Made to Stick? Yes. So for a joke to stick, you got to get it.
Yeah.
Is basically what the lesson from that was. But we're just terrible.
Well, look, when Democrats are largely legislators, right, as opposed to Republicans who focus on messaging. Madison Cawthorn came into office and expressly said that his focus was communications and not legislation, which is great if your job is to govern. Should messaging and charisma be the primary factors that Democrats take into consideration when we're running candidates.
No, I mean, but you want people to win. But no, but you can do both. You know, you can be, and by messaging, I don't mean making a great bumper sticker or making a great slogan. I just mean being able to speak in a compelling way and in a way that makes sense, in a way that people understand, in a way that people are, drawn to you and interested and and that you're convincing.
Something that's interesting is we look at what works on the right, and we know what works on the right because Fox News, they do two things. Well, they lie and then they repeat it over and over and over and over and over again. And these lawmakers do the same thing. It feels like when you watch these Republicans come out, it feels like they went to the morning meeting and came out with their talking points, and they all are completely on message, and they just pepper away with the same exact message over and over and over and over again. Democrats generally don't like to do that because it's exhausting and not a very compelling way to do this. But at the same time, the Republican Party has build the wall, has all of their 3-4 word bumper stickers basically that everybody knows. Is this a strategy that Democrats should take, where it's just simple repetition over and over and over again to the point, to a maddening degree, but at the same time, does it not work?
I still think that we can be compelling when we speak and that we can message in a better way without just endlessly repeating things. You're right. We like to legislate. We like to... The Republican Party is for nothing right now. There's nothing they're for. They have, famously, there was no platform in the 2020, and they don't have a platform for 2022. They don't care about, they don't have any ideas. And it's like, it's sort of easy to be for nothing, I guess. You just can be brain dead. But they're like against everything. That takes some effort. And it's really sad. We have a party now that is unlike any, they're an autocratic party. And it's scary. And I just, and they also have all this money behind them. They have Fox News that's willing to do exactly what you're saying, constantly lie. But I really believe if we put this legislation out there, if people see what it is, I would love to debate it. I would love to change the rules of the filibuster, to modify it, to have a talking filibuster so that you debate this stuff. We should, obviously we have 2 senators who won't do that.
We did have a more promising redistricting cycle than we had anticipated. Granted, a lot of what happens in midterms is going to depend on Biden's approval rating and what legislation we are able to put out. But I don't know that we're in the same all hope is lost position that we were in 6 months ago.
We're going to start seeing these infrastructure projects start, at least. People will see them beginning. It'll be interesting to see how many Republicans in the House who voted against the infrastructure bill who'll be at the groundbreakings. I had that experience.
Yeah. Well, you know what? They'll be happy to tweet about it and talk about it in their town halls, just like they've already started doing. And that's before any ground was broken. Just wait until these bridges start to go up and these roads start to get paved.
Those are the groundbreakings.
To see Republicans fall.
I was at a groundbreaking early on for an extension of a highway, and I got there. I got to the Senate late, as you remember, in 2009. So I didn't vote for the stimulus package. So I was at this event, and there were a lot of mayors, local mayors, county executives, etc. But Amy was there, who voted for it, and I was there. But also Eric Paulson, the Republican congressman from the 3rd District, was there, and he voted against it. So when Amy spoke first, and we were wearing, it was like this hard hats and shovel event, one of those things. So I went up to speak, and I said, well, I have to admit, I did not vote for the stimulus package. I got there late. So we really should just thank the members of Congress who are here, who voted for it. So let me see. That would be, see, Amy and, oh, not Eric. Eric voted against it,
Yeah.
right? You voted against the stimulus thing. Why? I don't know exactly why Eric's here. Huh?
Did he ever respond to you?
He just went. He was kind of not a very dynamic. He was a tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a tool, and he didn't have the wherewithal to respond. And also, he was on very thin
Not
ice.
much of a response you could give. Not much of a response you can give anyway to that.
No, he shouldn't have been there. I wanted to shame him for being there.
Speaking of the filibuster, we do have the opportunity in the Senate. Also, we have a lot of close races coming up. We have Senate races that are perfectly winnable in places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, especially. And I know you've been asked this as well. And I apologize if this question is annoying at this point. But do you have any desire at any point to run again for office?
Well, I'm young. I'm 70. And
By today's standards.
and Chuck Grassley is running for re-election. He's 87. What I found interesting was that he kind of condemned Trump right after January 6th. Nevertheless, embraced him in Iowa a month ago. And I just thought, if you're not going to stand up for principle and risk your political career when you're 87, you're probably not ever going to do it. And so I don't know. I love being in the Senate. I can tell you that. And I follow it all the time, and it's frustrating to follow it and to watch some of the hearings and not see the kind. I was pretty good at questioning people. So I would, yeah, I'm considering doing it again at some time.
Well, I do know that you missed the Senate. We've spoken about that on previous episodes and previous interviews. Obviously, though, comedy has always been a huge part of your life. When you're on tour like you are right now, does that fill some of that void for you? Do you feel like you're back where you belong?
Oh yeah, I was part of a comedy team, Franken and Davis, way back. You may be too young. But we were two of the original SNL writers, and we went to high school together, and we were a comedy team, and we used to tour as a team, but I never did it as a single stand-up. And I really admire great stand-ups. I'm a huge fan of so many, actually, stand-ups today, but also people like Carlin and Pryor and those people. And so I started to go down to the Comedy Cellar and the Village and doing stand-up. And, and I've been on tour. I did 15 cities last fall, and I'm about to start, I'm going to Bethlehem, PA next weekend, and also Tarrytown, New York, and I have 16 more gigs ahead of me, and I really love it. The show, it's just fun, and I love it as an art form, and I very much admire some of the great stand-ups I'm seeing today.
Has there been a moment since you've been on tour that was especially memorable for you?
Every laugh.
Or anybody that you've spoken with or met or anything like that that's been especially memorable?
Well, yeah, I'm seeing people around the country, or my friends are kind of showing up, but I really, just there's something about being in front of an audience and the electricity of doing it and hearing these huge laughs. And my focus, there's a lot about politics in it, a lot about my time in the Senate, but it's stand-up comedy. It's about laughs. And so I've been very happy with it, actually. Yeah.
How do you reconcile these two competing personas for you? Because I know that that you'd mentioned for a few years in the Senate, you were afraid to make anybody laugh because it would kind of undermine the gravitas of being a senator.
Well, I wanted people to understand that I was there to do my job, and I was. So there was that. And then once so my first term, I was very, my team told me, don't be funny. Don't be funny on the floor. Don't be funny in hearings. I could be funny in the caucus lunch. I could be funny on the floor just talking to my colleagues. We had an unbelievably great time in our office. I think I had the greatest continuity of staff because we had a lot of fun and also got a tremendous amount done. But yeah, but once I won re-election, I tell this story about. So I won re-election, and so I said, "Okay, come on now." And I was kind of the first time I won by 312 votes. This time I won by well over 200,000. So I felt like, okay, come on, I've proven it. I can be funny. So after Obergefell came out, and the Supreme Court decision legalizing same-gender marriage nationwide, I said, I'm going to write the press release. So I wrote Senator Al Franken, Democrat of Minnesota, congratulated the Supreme Court today on legalizing same-gender marriage nationwide, but called Justice Antonin Scalia's dissent, quote, very gay. And
Yeah.
and my team went, no. I went, oh, come on, I won. I get to do that. I went, no, you can't do it.
And
I
did
went,
you?
oh, geez. No,
Did
they
you?
just, I
So
mean, I
they squashed it.
basically would give in
Yeah.
to my community because they had
Yeah.
done a really
Yeah.
good job. And I just felt like, okay, it's not worth it. I suppose I had the
Right.
authority to say, yes, you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose so. Al, where can people watching and listening find out more about the tour?
And go to alfranken.com, if you can remember that. alfranken.com, and they have the tour schedule, and they can get they can see if I'm coming to your community, if your city.
Great. And of course, podcast and the YouTube channel, I would highly recommend if anybody's watching or
Thank
listening
you.
wants to check out Al on the podcast or YouTube channel. Great watches, great videos and episodes. So Al, with that said, thank you so much for taking the time again. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for your friendship.